Good morning to everybody tapping in. Organic Minds episode number 21. I want to thank everybody for tapping in with me. Y'all know as the video going on, I'll be tagging people, sharing the videos. And I always say I want to thank everybody who tune in and tapping with me and go on this journey for knowledge and information. And I always say that it's my job is to only bring you this information and not so much to sway you to the point to where I'm trying to make you believe what I believe, but just to make you think and look at the information yourself, right? So today we got a great, give me 1 second. I don't know what this is saying. So today we got a lot to talk about. So I stumbled across a video the other day, like 2 days ago, and I listened to the first beginning and I realized that this is some of the Freedom of Information Act. And the Freedom of Information Act was documents they released that the FBI and CIA have been holding, like about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all things that they had kind of been hiding, because even in other cultures and nationalities in America. So this one was about the debriefing of what deals we made with extraterrestrials. And I already have some knowledge of this when I used to say years ago that the U.S. government made deals with the Greys and other beings for technologies and certain things. And they were saying it was during Eisenhower's time when he was presidency. This is when this happened, like when they had the meeting and everything. Now, what's crazy is that this video, he's going to break it down to you and read what they read it. And I think he got some images and footage for you. And it's super deep. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just telling everybody who's watching now, I'm telling you now, this is for those with the open mind, because they even go into detail about certain things. And it's very well reported, and we have to start realizing that it's a lot of things they're not telling us. Just like about when my other episode, when I was showing you, like, why would you, if you testing nuke bombs, why would you test it in the water, knowing that water is the key to life? So it got to be something more to it. And then everything that's going on in New Jersey with the drones, and it's not just New Jersey, it's all over California, Kansas, you know what I'm saying? Some places in Miami, they've seen it all over the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia. There's like these sightings are being seen all over. So that's the first video. The second video is going to be about, I used to watch a show a couple years ago called Bizarre Foods, and I used to always bug out because it's what he would go to eat. But I just like to show you one thing about culture and what represents history and culture is its food. And sometimes you can tell a lot about a culture by its food and what they eat. Some of these things are very extreme, but we'll explain, like in certain areas when you got billions, you got to find new ways for food supply or y'all gonna starve. And this is where a lot of the stuff comes from in China or Japan. So we're gonna do that video, and I promise you it's a crazy video. So stay tuned. And so before we start, let me do my intro, and we're gonna get out of the way. But good morning, everybody. If you in here tapped in with me, like, comment, share. I'm on YouTube. I'm gonna share the YouTube link in the chat on Facebook and everything. So because when you make comments or people that comment, it pops up on my YouTube feed. Like if you comment on my YouTube, I can put it on the screen. So I want to thank y'all, man. Good morning. Thank y'all for tapping in. For all my smokers like one, whatever you take to get your mind right. But enjoy the show. And good morning.
Tell us about your father.
Why don't you tell us something about your father?
We're trying to get to know each other, Mr. Lowe.
I was trying to get to know you, Mr. Tolson.
Well, I'm not the one on the debate team.
Are we not engaged in a debate right now?
All right. I'll take the affirmative. Take the meanest, most restless nigger. Strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, female niggers, and nigger infants. Tar and feather him. Tie each leg to a horse facing in opposite direction, set him on fire, and beat both horses until they tear him apart in front of the male, female, and nigger infants. Bullwhip and beat the remaining nigger males within an inch of their life. Do not kill them, but put the fear of God in them, for they can be useful for future breeding. Anybody know who Willie Lynch was? Anybody? Raise your hand. No one? He was a vicious slave owner in the West Indies. The slave masters in the colony of Virginia were having trouble controlling their slaves, so they sent for Mr. Lynch to teach them his methods. The word lynching came from his last name. His methods were very simple, but they were diabolical. Keep the slave physically strong, but psychologically weak and dependent on the slave master. Keep the body, take the mind. I and every other professor on this campus are here to help you to find, take back, and keep your righteous mind. Because obviously you have lost it. That's all you need to know about me, Mr. Lowe.
If you know me from back when I was on radio, I always use that as my intro for the last couple of years just because of the tone it set. And I always say that. It set a certain tone for the conversation. But it also shows a couple things. The tear between the youth and the elderly in this, right, is represented in this footage. So that's why I always start with this, between Denzel as the wise elder and then the young man as the up-and-coming wise young man, but still bold and charismatic, but still need to be nurtured or led the right way. And then this is just showing you that it's saying, even though intelligent when we're young, we still need to be guided by elders, and that's something that's missing. But in this clip, it's the serious nature of him. And it's like, that's my goal in the show, is to help everybody, for the people that tap in, or anybody who come across anything that I do, to understand that it's spirit. And one of the things I'm big on is spirituality, but just understanding self. And I think it's very important for us to care about wanting to learn and evolve to where we need to be, because as we see, the world around us is changing daily. So this next convo, The Hardwood Truth About Aliens, I'm gonna let this play. And I want y'all to tell me what y'all think in the feeds, because there's gonna be a lot that's gonna go past here. And if you're in the feeds, whether if you're on Instagram, and let me make sure I tap them in. If you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, like, share, comment. And when you comment in the feed, it will always let you know when I'm live. So let me know how you feel. Good morning, everybody. And I'll be looking in the feeds. And we're going to get to this. But this is for the real and the open-minded.
On December 12th, 2024, around 6:05 p.m. Eastern, I walk right past my balcony window. I live right across the river from the Newark FBI office, and I saw a massive 50-foot, approximately Vonta Black boomerang go right past my window. Silent, floated right across the river, right through the buildings downtown Newark. 3 white lights, 2 red, in a line on the back, made no noise.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Debriefed. My name is Chris Ramsey, and today we're going to take a good hard look at a document submitted to the Paranet website in 1987 by none other than the godfather of conspiracy, John Lear. But before we do that, I would highly encourage you guys to leave a like, subscribe, maybe hit the notification bell if you do enjoy these uploads. And if you're listening on audio, one thing that you could do that costs absolutely nothing is leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform it is you're listening to this episode on. And, you know, maybe a comment on why it is you like these deep dives. It goes a very long way, actually, in helping us propel into a favorable algorithm on Spotify and iTunes, etc. And if you can't get enough of below, folks, we've paid the bills. I think it's time to get into it. Okay, before I read these out, I will give you a brief history on Mr. Lear himself. So John Lear is a former aviation captain, a commercial pilot, but also happens to be the son of Learjet inventor Bill Lear. John Lear, until he passed away a few years ago, was one of the most prominent figures in the UFO landscape. He not only had multiple FAA certifications, but also flew on several missions for the CIA, which inevitably made him a little bit more credible when he came out with the information that someone he knew worked for a secret facility within the United States government at Area 51 called Section 4, otherwise known as S4. Yes, folks, he introduced the world to Bob Lazar. He met with George Knapp and set up the most famous interview in ufology, I believe, to date.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
However, over time, Lear's assertions became increasingly outlandish. He would go on rants about lunar bases, the moon being a hologram, and mind control projects. And while some admired him as a whistleblower, others felt his credibility waned as he got into more and more extreme conspiracies. And say what you want about the guy, but this guy was talking about mind control things before MK Ultra went public. He was also talking about underground military bases where they were reverse engineering alien craft before we even heard of Area 51. Now, there isn't an...
Now, for everybody who be watching this and don't know as much, because it's a lot that I'm going to bring to y'all about this topic this year, because I dug deep into this for years, so it's something that a lot of people don't speak about who really know and understand. But Lear definitely brought a lot of information. If you go back on YouTube and watch his old videos, he got a lot. We sat down, all the people through the last 30, 40 years who had information on whistleblowers, they sat down with them. So some of the stuff, we know that the CIA and the FBI give them information and they'll give them like 70% truth, and then they also feed them a bunch of fake stuff to confuse everybody. So we don't know what's real and what's not. But he was very influential to the culture, if you ever dug a study. And it's very, very key to understand that the background. So everybody that they give you on your spare time, look up these people, and then you'll start to get a better understanding of the bigger picture of what's really going on here.
Entire other side to this is that he potentially could be a psyop, meaning that the government used him in an active disinformation campaign, which would not be unheard of. And in fact, John Lear admits to this. He says that there is a potential that they fed him false information, and that would muddy up the actual correct information that he was able to leak out. And that's the way a lot of these disinformation campaigns function, is that they will put out a vast majority of truth and insert only one or two fibs. But these fibs sounding so extreme and bizarre in nature that it makes you literally throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, I guess they're lying about everything. Now, what those lies are, I guess, is up to the public to decide. And that's something we're going to try to get to the bottom of today, as we're going to read through a statement that he put out so many years ago in 1987, detailing the government's involvement with EBEs, or extraterrestrial biological entities, UFOs, the reverse engineering, and the government's role in future disclosure. This all begins with a nice cover letter. This is from John W. White. If I'm not mistaken, John White is also a UFO researcher, and he is just forwarding this document that was put up on their version of Reddit, essentially. And he's saying the following, dear somebody, I don't know who that is, but it says, I'm sending this astounding...
Let me show you why I stopped paying for all my other sample libraries. This is Arcade by Output. This thing has
document about UFOs to you because I feel you will be interested and or have a need to know. I obtained it by downloading it from an electronic bulletin board called Paranet, which is headquartered in Arizona and has regional nodes. Paranet is dedicated to disseminating information about paranormal phenomena and acting as a forum for discussion. Memberships in Paranet is free and open to the public. All it takes is a computer and a modem. You can dial in at 603-837-0062. Then find the original node nearest you so your phone charges will be minimized. Sincerely, John White. And whoever this was directed to wrote underneath a few questions that my guess is he faxed back to this person back then, and underlining Paranet and saying, who set this up? Who sustains it financially and why? Who benefits from those who really know things identifying themselves and their views via this bulletin board? I smell federal deceit. So even the person that this was sent to back in 1987 thought that this also was a psyop. Folks, we stand on the very shaky shoulders of a lot of conspiracy theorists before us. Let's get into his document. It starts by saying, John Lear has requested that the following file be published on Paranet. It is our philosophy to encourage debate on paranormal issues, no matter how controversial, and we welcome his input. The information contained in this file has not been verified by Paranet, nor do the opinions expressed herein necessarily reflect those of the administrator or other Paranet staff members. We can state, however, that John is who he says he is and has numerous contacts in sensitive positions that could conceivably allow him to access information of this type. And that, folks, has been known for a very long time, is that John was working in the CIA and did say on numerous occasions that he was being fed information by people who were on the inside, or otherwise known as people in the program. So here is the statement. We begin. This is December 29th, 1987, folks. Almost 40 years to the day. That is insane. John Lear, a captain for a major U.S. airline, has flown over 160 different types of aircraft in over 50 different countries. He holds 17 world speed record in Learjet and is the only pilot ever to hold every airline certificate issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. Lear has flown missions worldwide for the CIA and other government agencies. A former Nevada state senator candidate, he is the son of William P. Lear, designer of the Learjet executive airplane, the 8-track stereo, and founder of Lear-Siegler Corporation. Lear became interested in the subject of UFOs 13 months ago after talking with United States Air Force personnel who had witnessed a UFO landing at Bentwaters Air Force Base near London, England, and 3 small aliens walking up to the wing commander. So the Lakenheath Bentwaters incident, now when saying, is it Lakenheath, Lakenheath, I'm not sure, but that does sound familiar. Isn't that the current Air Force base that is being incurred by a lot of these unexplainable drone activities? So the Lakenheath Bentwaters incident was a series of radar and visual contacts with UFOs over air bases in eastern England on the night of August 13th and 14th in 1956. So it involved personnel from the Royal Air Force and the United States Air Force. I mean, some of these targets were detected.
That's the reason why you got to use your mind in this. As you listening, I just want you to think about the things that you know and what relates now and everything that you've heard. Because I'm gonna start to point out little things, because these are the exact places that these beings are showing up. And if they're holding entities or they're looking for people, right? You know what I mean? Or if they had deals, these are the things. And so I promise you, as I say, everybody who tapped in, stay tuned, because this shit get crazy. I promise you, this shit get crazy.
Detected approaching Bentwaters from the east at a speed estimated from 2,000 to 4,000 miles an hour. It passed overhead. A rapidly moving white light was observed from the ground, while the pilot of a C-47 at 4,000 feet over Bentwaters reported a similar light had passed beneath his craft. At this point, Bentwaters alerted the U.S. tenanted RAF Lakenheath base 40 miles to the northwest to look out for targets. And then ground personnel at Lakenheath made visual sightings of several luminous objects, including 2 which arrived, made a sharp change in course, and appeared to merge before moving off. And so what Mr. Lear is getting to here, that it didn't stop with radar and visual sightings of a UFO, but that it continued with 3 small aliens walking up to the wing commander. All right, we carry on here. Note to the press: the government of the United States continues to rely on your personal and professional gullibility to suppress the information contained herein. Your cooperation over the past 40 years has exceeded our wildest expectations, and we salute you. The sun does not revolve around the earth. The United States government has been in business with little gray extraterrestrials for about 20 years. The first truth stated here got Giordano Bruno burned at the stake in 1600 AD for daring to propose that this was real. The second truth has gotten far more people killed trying to state it publicly than will ever be known. That was a dark fact right there. Wow. But the truth must be told. The fact that the earth revolves around the sun was successfully suppressed by the church for over 200 years. It eventually caused a major upheaval in the church, government, and thought. A realignment of social and traditional values that was in the 1800s. Now, about 400 years after the first truth was pronounced, we must again face the shocking facts, the horrible truth the government has been hiding from us for over 40 years. Unfortunately, the horrible truth is far more horrible than the government had ever imagined. In its effort to protect democracy, our government sold us to the aliens. And here's how it happened. But before I begin, I'd like to offer a word in the defense of those who bargained us away. They had the best of intentions. We know that saying. The road to hell was paved with good intentions. Germany may have recovered a flying saucer as early as 1939. General James H. Doolittle went to Sweden in 1946 to inspect a flying saucer that had crashed there in Spitsbergen. In 1947, President Truman established a group of 12 of the top military scientific personnel of their time. They were known as MJ-12, or Majestic 12.
The people that control this information is a organization that we know of as MJ-12.
Although the group exists today, none of the original members are still alive. The last one to die was Gordon Gray, former Secretary of the Army, in 1984. As each member passed away, the group itself appointed a new member to fill the position. There is some speculation that the group known as MJ-12 expanded to at least several more members. There were several more saucer crashes in the late 1940s, one in Roswell, New Mexico, one in Aztec, New Mexico, and one near Laredo, Texas, about 30 miles inside the Mexican border. Consider, if you will, the position of the United States government at the time. There are several crashes reported here, one of which is mentioned is Aztec, New Mexico, and this is one I'm currently looking into as I'm reading a book on it, and there seems to be a substantial and overwhelming amount of evidence, of documentation of this retrieval to have happened, and that this craft was eventually, potentially, brought into Los Alamos. You know, by looking at the 4chan whistleblower, if you haven't checked that video out yet, I highly recommend, but we did a deep dive on this person who said he basically worked for a secret branch of the government that did these crash retrievals. But he would say that, yeah, near Mexico and New Mexico, that's where they would go down. They avoid that spot like the plague currently, but back then they would find quite a bit of them go down in that vicinity. It really, really makes you ponder that during that time, obviously there was the Manhattan Project that came from this, and, you know, Oppenheimer and all of that, where the Germans were racing against the Russians and the Americans to try and build a nuke. And during that time, you know, there was a ton of nuclear work being done, and thus UFO incursions were happening at all these bases. And namely, if you want to check it out, there's an amazingly brilliant video by YouTuber Jesse Michaels, American Alchemy, who put that out. Go check that out. What a fun rabbit hole to jump down. He did a brilliant job on that. So think about this. The government, we know that during the Cold War, when they even heard about psychics or Russia's sort of psychic activity into mind reading and mind control and all of that, they started their own branches of the very same work, because they said, hey, if this stuff is real, we can't take a chance and not look into it. We have to at least pour some resources into it and look at it, you know, ourselves. The same has to be said about the UFO thing. I mean, Foo Fighters in the war were avoiding these things because they were almost colliding with them during their missions. There had to be an extreme amount of research into this topic by both the Axis and the Allies back then. You'd be a fool to think they weren't at least trying to uncover what was going on and militarizing it somehow. I digress. Consider, if you will, the position of the United States government at that time. They proudly thought of themselves as the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently produced the atomic bomb, an achievement so stupendous, it would take Russia 4 years to catch up, and only with the help of traitors to democracy. They had built a jet aircraft that had exceeded the speed of sound in flight. They had built jet bombers with intercontinental range that could carry weapons of enormous destruction. The post-war era and the future seemed
live from New York.
SNL was the biggest show ever.
bright. Now imagine what it was like for those same leaders, all of whom had witnessed the panic of Orson Welles' radio broadcast, The War of the Worlds, in 1938.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmuth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Lord, they're turning into flames. The whole field's caught up by the wood, the fires, the gas tanks for the automobiles.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill.
Thousands of Americans panicked at a realistically presented invasion of Earth by beings from another planet. Imagine their horror as they actually viewed the dead bodies of these frightening-looking little creatures with enormous eyes, reptilian skin, and claw-like fingers. Imagine their shock as they attempted to determine how these strange saucers were powered. and could discover no part even remotely similar to components they were familiar with. No cylinders or pistons, no vacuum tubes or turbines or hydraulic actuators. It is only when you fully understand the overwhelming helplessness the government was faced with in the late 1940s that you can comprehend their perceived need for a total, thorough, and sweeping cover-up, to include the use of deadly force. When something this paradigm shifting on the military battlefield is encountered, you have to acknowledge that putting this in the wrong hands can lead to devastating and obviously world-changing consequences. So their use of deadly force to protect this secret, according to them, was justified. The cover-up was so successful that as late as 1985, a senior scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, Dr. Al Hibbs, would look at a videotape of an enormous flying saucer and state the record, "I'm not going to assign anything to that UFO phenomena without a lot more data." Dr. Hibbs was looking at the naked emperor and saying he certainly looks naked, but that doesn't prove he's naked. Sounds a lot like Arrow. In July of 1952, a panicked government watched helplessly as a squadron of flying saucers flew over Washington, D.C. and buzzed the White House, the Capitol building, and the Pentagon. It took all the imagination and intimidation the government could muster to force that incident out of the memory of the public.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any department of the United States.
A pretty incredible incident. Had that happened today, it kind of is happening today, if you think about it. Thousands of sightings occurred during the Korean War, and several more saucers were retrieved by the Air Force. Some were stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Some were stored at Air Force bases near the location of the crash site. What I'm going to read to you next is interesting because this was actually echoed by Ross Coulthard recently. As recent as last year, Ross had said that there was a giant UFO somewhere that was too big to move, so they built the base around it. And that really made headlines in the UFO community.
People are going to question what I'm about to say. What if some of that shit is so big it can't be moved? So big they built a building over it in a country outside of the United States of America.
But in fact, John Lear, he's got it right here. One saucer was so enormous and the logistic problems in transportation so enormous that it was buried at the crash site and remains there today. The stories are legendary on transporting crashed saucers over long distances, moving only at night, purchasing complete...
So the reason they saying that they didn't tell us was because them feeling like they're the most powerful nation in the world. If they show vulnerability to the world, then that affects how the world, because they was already at war. But also the people, when the people of civilization don't feel like the government can protect them, we cause chaos and panic. Now, do I agree with it? I don't. Do I understand the logic of it? I do. Because everybody can't handle it. Like, you had this conversation with 100 people and everybody can't have this conversation. But I want y'all to pay attention. Like, we have UFOs in America. But if you've been watching it, you know that they got, like, China got way more than us. That's why their technology is so advanced. So it's not only us that's recovering these things. But that's why sometimes we go to war over shit that we think they fighting over one thing, but they fighting over something else that was found.
Farms, slashing through forests, blocking major highways, sometimes driving 2 and 3 lowboys in tandem with an extraterrestrial load 100 feet in diameter. On April 30th, 1964, the first communication between these aliens and the U.S. government took place at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. 3 saucers had landed at a prearranged area, and a meeting was held between the aliens and intelligence officers of the U.S. government. All right, folks, the Holloman Air Force incident is pretty infamous in UFO lore. And one of the reasons why is because there was a documentary actually put out by the CIA back in the day. And at the very end of this documentary is about an 8-second clip. This 8-second clip is what seems to be has a flying saucer coming down on sort of desert terrain and about to land, and the video feed cuts. Turns out the I believe, director of that very documentary, says that that video exists uncut. And that as the video goes on, this craft comes to the ground, lands, and exiting from it are multiple alien beings. And that's where a meeting happened. But hidden in plain sight, they decided to keep in footage in this documentary. And here's a clip.
And in 1973, they go to Bob Emenegger and Alan Sadler, two producers in Los Angeles, and they asked them to do a UFO documentary. And Bob Emenegger is a total UFO skeptic, said, "What do you mean this is for real?" And at that point, the security manager, Paul Shardle at Norton Air Force Base, said, what would you say if I told you an alien ship landed at Holloman Air Force Base, 6 o'clock in the morning in May of 1971, and we filmed it from 3 different vantage points, 2 on the ground, 1 in a helicopter, and we will allow you to use the film for your documentary. So he puts this documentary, and then what happens at the end of the documentary is they say, we can't use the film. We can't allow, it's the Watergate, it's bad timing, we can't allow you to use the film, and they pull the film. And then I find out that there's 8 seconds of the Holloman Air Force Base film in the film. So Bob's my friend, I phone up Bob. There's 8 seconds of film in there. And he goes, well, yeah. And I said, you told me they pulled the film. Oh, no, he said, it's background. And I said, background? What do you mean it's background? And he said, it didn't show anything. And what it is you see the hills of Holloman, and you see this object, this brilliantly lit object at 6 o'clock in the morning coming over the hills, but it's in a distance. So you don't see it close up, and you don't see the alien when the alien gets out. That's the classified part. So they want you to know that Holloman happened, and they allowed them to use the 8 seconds of the film, but the rest of the film, the classified part, was pulled.
Make of that what you will, but that is one compelling story. So during the period of 1969 to 1971, MJ-12, representing the U.S. government, made a deal with these creatures called EBEs, or extraterrestrial biological entities, named by Detlev Bronk. He was an original MJ-12 member and 6th president of Johns Hopkins University. The deal was that in exchange for technology they would provide to us, we agreed to ignore the abductions that were going on and suppress information on the cattle mutilations. And to further illustrate,
so even Phil Snyder said the same thing, that they met and they told him, like, basically to give you technology, and it was some stuff that they told him, if you know about other stuff, because I know about it, they wanted other weapons from them, but the beings told them that they weren't spiritually ready or advanced enough, that we weren't there yet. So they offered them the technology, what we using today. So when we talking about this AI, I always said that it was living. Like, and even when they do their work with Google's AI came out and said that it was sentinel, meaning that it's really a living and thinking. It's not what you think it is. That's why they hurried up and they got him quiet, because they fired him. And then like less than a year later, they brought him back. Because, you know what I'm saying? I guess they realized something. They didn't really go super public about it. But they made a deal with them about the abductions. And the abductions, it was saying, like, they told them basically that they was going to only take but so many, but they was going to give them a list. Because they said, oh, we don't hurt nobody. We just take some genes, some semen, stuff like that from them. If you've been following this, then you know this. This has always been part of the story. And then they realized that they wasn't being honest with them.
Straight this point, here's a 1988 episode of Gumby.
Chromosomes from your kind to develop a stronger breed of people, because on our planet, radiation damages our DNA so that we are dying off to extinction. We'll help you, but you know, we need help too. What do you need? The people on Earth are suffering from many kinds of pollution. We need your advanced technology to help us develop a clean source of energy.
The EBEs assured MJ-12 that the abductions, usually lasting about 2 hours, were merely the ongoing monitoring of...
Hey, you know they say in plain sight, so they've been prepping us for a long time. And there's certain events that even Rashad Jamal was saying that happened, and just like Men in Black, you know that machine, when I told you that device that they use in Men in Black really exists, because you can Google it. But even when we was watching the movie, and they flashed it, right? We watching a movie and at the same time they was, and we don't realize it. So that's why I say everything possible, but in plain sight is the secret. It's always been in our face, the movies and everything.
Developing
the how should I say it? A lot of people I used to build the elders, they called it the visual college. The movies is where they place the things that they don't like, some stuff in books, but they put the things in the movies that they don't really tell us straight up, but so our mind can already have a concept of it so that we don't freak out when we see it.
Civilizations. And here John lists out the purposes for the abductions and what they turned out to be. Number one, the insertion of a 3mm spherical device through the nasal cavity of the abductee into the brain. The device is used for the biological monitoring, tracking, and control of the abductee. This is something touched on in several books by thousands of abductees, actually, which is interesting. You know, looking at the work of John Mack, David Jacobs, Bud Hopkins, this would come up quite frequently, that this rod, which had a very tiny ball on the end of it, was inserted into the nasal cavity way far up. And then when extracted, that ball was gone. What's also interesting to me is that it says to control the abductee, which makes me think that these gray beings, maybe perhaps not the other beings, but the gray ones specifically, couldn't mind control you maybe without it. Number two, implementation of post-hypnotic suggestion to carry out a specific activity during a specific time period, the actuation of which will occur within the next 2 to 5 years. Well, there's that. I mean, this was 1987. That would make it 1992 at the latest. Maybe they did, I don't know, carry out some specific activity that is unbeknownst to us that has perhaps little or no consequence to our daily.
I also want y'all to think about Men in Black came out in the 90s. So I want y'all to think about everything from the time dates, and you start thinking about when stuff was going down and when these movies came out. So that's how you know. And when I was in school, they taught us that in psychology, the mind can't create anything that it hasn't seen before. And the example given was nobody in the world can tell us what God looked like technically, because none of us have ever visually seen him. So if you dream about him, you're either going to see him as a light or somebody talking to you blurred, but you don't know. The brain doesn't know what context to put God in, so it can't give it a format. The mind has to have seen it before. So then anything man created, whether in meditation or in a deep state, the mind has to see it. You know what I'm saying? And then it can be manifested and shown to everybody else. There's no image of anything from nothing. Everything that we got has been made. First we thought it and then it existed. So even from all the different types of extraterrestrial races you've seen in movies, they didn't make that up. Somebody had to see that. Where did the format come from?
Lives, I don't know, but that seems speculatory at best. Number three, termination of some people so that they could function as living sources for biological material and substances. Okay. Number four, termination of individuals who represent a threat to the continuation of their activity.
In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay. Yeah. I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life to put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that?
Number five, affect genetic engineering experiments. Number six, impregnation of human females and early termination of pregnancies to secure the crossbreed infant. It seems like the craziest, but honestly, this is the most widely reported among abductees, is the genetic engineering that has taken place on board, and most of the time has to do with what seems to be some type of hybridization program. Again, this isn't stuff that I'm making up. It's stuff that I've read, and that's quite expansive in terms of the literature that's out there and the documentation of this. Like, this has been documented extensively, mainly through post-hypnotic regression, because for some reason, apparently the people who've been abducted, they just, their memories are wiped, but for some reason, I guess these EBEs don't have access to the subconscious. The impregnation thing, I mean, that comes up quite a bit. Does this mean all extraterrestrials are doing this? No. Does this mean any of them are doing this? No, but it does suggest it. With extraordinary claims, I mean, you require extraordinary evidence. And the only evidence that exists that's out there today currently is, for the most part, at best, anecdotal. And let's be clear, that doesn't imply that I'm invalidating this anecdotal evidence, but it is someone's word against another. What is interesting is that there are thousands of these someone who are saying essentially the same things. And I think when that happens and you gain enough human intelligence testimony, I think you have to start looking at it more seriously. And I think that's what some of the work of a lot of these researchers did, including, potentially here, John Lear. Believe it, don't believe it. We're going to keep reading. I think this is really interesting. I'm not saying that this is what's going on, by the way, folks. All right. So don't work yourselves up for this. I would love to hear your opinion on this, whether you think it's true or not, but I would encourage you to at least do some research on it, because you'll find that in the research that I've done with multiple people who have, great educational backgrounds and varying degrees of credibility, have talked about this very thing for a very long time. It's kind of like the dark side, like ufology and the UFO stuff. There's the UAP, the drone, all this, but then there's like a deeper, more nefarious section to ufology that he's touching on. And it can be disturbing for some to look down that road, and others choose just to ignore it completely. And that's totally fine. So the US government was not initially aware of their far-reaching consequences of their deal. They were led to believe that the abductions were essentially benign. And since they figured the abductions would probably go on anyway, whether they agreed to or not, they merely insisted that a current list of abductees be submitted on a periodic basis to MJ-12 and the National Security Council. Does this sound incredible? An actual list of abductees sent to the National Security Council? Read on, because I have news for you. All right, here we go into what I assume is some speculation. I mean, this whole document might just be speculatory, but regardless. The EBEs have a genetic disorder in that their digestive system is atrophied and non-functional. Some speculate that they were involved in some type of accident or nuclear war, or possibly on the backside of an evolutionary genetic curve, meaning they're like devolving. In order to sustain themselves, they used an enzyme or hormonal secretion obtained from the tissue that they extract from humans and animals. Note that cows and humans are genetically similar. In the event of a national disaster, cow's blood can be used by humans. We've talked about this before with the EBO document. The secretions obtained are then mixed with hydrogen peroxide, applied on the skin by spreading or dipping parts of their bodies in the solution. The body absorbs the solution, then secretes the waste back out through the skin. This sounds familiar. Obviously, this document came out way before the EBO document came out, suggesting that the pores on their skin were made to sort of secrete whatever it was. But what he says here is the secretions are mixed with hydrogen peroxide to disinfect. Like, why would that be necessary? The EBO document said that they assumed that they drank liquids. What John Lear is alluding to here is that instead they dipped parts of their body or spread this solution. Now, how can you tell the difference between what you're consuming and what you're excreting, like your body, for instance? It doesn't make sense. That's
Or
like feeding.
or they could be talking about two similar types, but different. Just like on Earth, there's different types. So what makes you think that on each, because it's multiple, what makes you think on each place is not different types of similar beings or different types of beings that's intelligent, right? So they could be talking about two similar, or two completely different ones, if it's true, right?
Ourselves through our own anuses. Like, it just doesn't seem, obviously it doesn't seem delectable, but it also doesn't seem very logical. Yeah, who knows? So the cattle mutilations that were prevalent throughout the period from 1973 to 1983 and publicly noted through newspaper and magazine stories, and included a documentary produced by Linda Howe for Denver CBS affiliate KMGH-TV, were for the collection of these tissues by the aliens. The mutilations included genitals taken, rectums cored out to the colon, eyes, tongue, and throat all surgically removed with extreme precision. In some cases, the incisions were made by cutting between the cells, a process that we are not yet capable of performing in the field. That's really interesting. Wow. How can you even verify that? In many of the mutilations, there was no blood found at all in the carcass. Yet there was no vascular collapse of the internal organs. This has been also noted in the human mutilations. One of the first of which was Sergeant Jonathan P. Louette at the White Sands Missile Test Range in 1956, who was found 3 days after an Air Force major had witnessed his abduction by a disc-shaped object at 0300 hours while on a search for missile debris downrange. And the following is a little explicit, folks. Forewarned. His genitals had been removed, rectum cored out in a surgically precise plug up to the colon, eyes removed, and all blood removed with, again, no vascular collapse. From some of the evidence, it is apparent that this surgery is accomplished in most cases while the victim, animal or human, is still alive. The various parts of the body are taken to various underground laboratories, one of which is known to be near the small New Mexico town of Dulce. This jointly occupied CIA-alien facility has been described as enormous with huge tiled walls that go on forever, in quotes. Witnesses have reported huge vats filled with amber liquid with parts of human bodies being stirred inside. Now this, folks, sounds like a hellish nightmare. Let's just stop here for a second, because I do want to acknowledge something, that John Lear has never seen any of this stuff.
I almost cheated on my husband because he couldn't get firm.
What? You almost cheated on him?
I couldn't take.
This is absolute speculatory information at best, but he's given zero sources. Know that I don't assume that this is the truth. I do find it interesting that there are connections to cattle mutilation, that there are military sites here that are named, military personnel, as well as, many factors that would indicate that something is going on, but none of which proves anything. Before some of you, log off being scared of this and like this is frightening you, know that this might not be the situation. And when disinformation happens, which I've mentioned before, a lot of times the truth is told. And a few little lies are sprinkled throughout, of which are probably the most unbelievable things. And so, with this stuff, I look for the things that stand out. And I say to myself, it's either an exaggeration, a misinterpretation, or disinformation, I think. Like a vat mixing it with human body parts, to me, that sounds completely ludicrous. I'll be honest. Is it real? Maybe, who knows? But to me, that sounds like you would add something into a story to try and incite fear, instill fear in someone. And so maybe that's him regurgitating information that he was given to make him fearful of, whatever's going on. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. We're guessing here. After the initial agreement, Groom Lake, one of this nation's most secret test centers, was closed for a period of about a year, sometime between 1972 and 1974, and a huge underground facility was constructed for and with the help of the EBEs. The bargained for technology was set in place but could only be operated by the EBEs themselves. Needless to say, the advanced technology could not be used against the EBEs themselves, even if needed. Now that is very interesting. This part I find extremely interesting. Because if you were an advanced civilization, the last thing you would want to do is give your most advanced technology to the most primitive life forms that you've ever encountered. Instead, you're going to bargain some deal where they can play with your toys as long as you can supervise it. And in exchange, you'll get access to whatever you were going to get access to anyways. But it seems like you're playing fair. This even kind of corresponds to some of the claims that Bob Lazar made, whereas when he went to S4, especially on one occasion when he was giving a tour, he had a look down sort of this hangar hallway and saw one of these, what he refers to as children, having a conversation with Air Force staff or the staff that was present. And, this thing was very, very short and it seemed like a child. And so it would be interesting to find out that they are indeed working with them. But I suppose if you were working with them, it wouldn't be under our set of rules. It would be under theirs. During the period between 1979 and 1983, it became increasingly obvious to MJ12 that things were not going as planned. It became known that many more people in the thousands were being abducted than were listed on the official abduction lists. In addition, it became obvious that some, not all, but some of the nation's missing children had been used for secretions and other parts required by the aliens. In 1979, there was an altercation of sorts at the Dulce laboratory. A special armed forces unit was called in to try and free a number of our people trapped in the facility who had become aware of what was really going on. According to one source, 66 of the soldiers were killed, and our people were not freed. Okay? What source? According to a source, anyone can say that. By 1984, MJ12 must have been in stark terror at the mistake they had made in dealing with the EBEs. They had subtly promoted Close Encounters of the Third Kind and ET to get the public used to odd-looking aliens that were compassionate, benevolent, and very much our space brothers. So again, he's stating here that, Close Encounters and ET, both Spielberg movies, by the way, were psyops to prepare the public, the general public, to sort of become aware of these benevolent, weird, strange-looking creatures. It is interesting. It is interesting as well that in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, J. Allen Hynek has a cameo and I think was probably used as a consultant during that movie. And I mean, Spielberg's fascination with UFOs goes on to today. He's currently, I think, working on another UFO movie or alien or UFO related movie that is slated for, I think, 2026. MJ12 sold the EBEs to the public, and we're now faced with the fact that quite the opposite was true. In addition, a plan was formulated in 1968 to make the public aware of the existence of aliens on Earth over the next 20 years, to be culminated with several documentaries to be released during 1985 to 1987 period of time. These documentaries would explain the history and intentions of the EBEs. The discovery of the grand deception put the entire plans, hopes, and dreams of MJ12 into utter confusion and panic.
So they just kept on, if you notice, they just kept on planning to tell us. Because when they first started years ago, when they first started, they brought that guy in and say, look, we're going to release this footage because they was excited. But then certain things made them pull back. And it's like the government or this group just keeps saying like, yo, after they realize that it's wrong, and this whole documentary is about this. Every piece he's saying, like every small piece has 1,000,000 pages to it. And it's people that lived in that area of Nevada who remember, that's still alive today, that remember the gunfire and all of the rumbling underground and where they lived. And they said they seen soldiers coming out bloodied up because they was trying to go and save some, but we didn't win that war. Because part of the bases, their bases is over there too. So in this agreement, but then you see how they kept saying like, we're going to tell them, but they never did. That's what's still going on today. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying everything true, but a lot of this is factor. Like you said, we got people from different walks of life saying the same thing that don't even know each other.
Well, these documentaries are still coming out. There was the recent one, which was, I believe, was it called Encounters, or it was on Netflix, and it was Spielberg once again. So very interesting. So meeting at the Country Club, a remote lodge with a private golf course, comfortable sleeping and working quarters, and its own private airship built by and exclusively for members of MJ12. It was a factional fight of what to do now. Part of MJ12 wanted to confess the whole scheme and shambles it had become to the public, beg their forgiveness, and ask for their support. The other part and majority of MJ12 argued that there was no way they could do that the situation was untenable, and there was no use in exciting the public with the horrible truth, and that the best plan was to continue the development of a weapon so that it could be used against the EBEs under the guise of Strategic Defense Initiative, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the defense for inbound Russian nuclear missiles. As these words are being written, Dr. Edward Teller, father of the H-bomb, is personally in the test tunnels of the Nevada test site, driving his workers and associates, in the words of one, like a man possessed. And well, he should, for Dr. Teller is a member of MJ-12, along with Dr. Kissinger, Admiral Bobby Inman, and possibly Admiral Poindexter, to name a few of the current MJ-12 members. Now, before the Grand Deception was discovered, and according to a meticulous plan of metered release of information to the public, several documentaries and UFO tapes were made. William Moore, a Burbank, California-based UFO researcher who wrote The Roswell Incident, a book published in 1980 that detailed the crash, recovery, and subsequent cover-up of a UFO with 4 alien bodies, has made a videotape of 2 newsmen interviewing a military officer associated with MJ-12. And the cover-up, the recovery of a number of flying saucers, and the existence of a live alien, one of 3 aliens captured and designated or named EBE-1, EBE-2, and EBE-3, being held in a facility designated as YY-2 at Los Alamos, New Mexico. The only other facility of this type which is electromagnetically secure is at Edwards Air Force Base in Mojave, California. The officer names, as previously mentioned, plus a few others, Harold Brown, Richard Helms, General Vernon Walters, JPL's Dr. Lou Allen, and Dr. Theodore von Karman, to name a few of the current and past members of MJ-12. The officer also relates the fact that EBEs claim to have created Christ. Now, this did come up as well in the blue documents that was sort of that were read allegedly by Bob Lazar during his briefing at S4. Him and Gene Huff had made a project about this, and this was really, really fascinating to a lot of people.
Extremely classified document dealing with religion, and it's about that thing. That we're containers. That's how supposedly the aliens look at us. That religion was specifically created, so we have some rules and regulations for the sole purpose of not damaging the containers.
Meaning,
well, the souls or the bodies, whatever. Right? That's
meaning like we're containers for souls that they're going to use at some other point.
Right.
And that they had something to do with different prophets and biblical figures.
Yes. Supposedly, Jesus and two other beings were genetically engineered. They were implanted in people on Earth in biblical times, and their births were closely monitored. Now, just some little connections to that my wife had brought up were in the Bible. They said that the star had followed Mary wherever she went, and that all UFO sightings always start out as people, well, gee, that looks like a bright star, and well, in fact, they said in the Bible, the brightest star in the sky followed her where she went, and just make little connections like that.
The EBEs have a type of recording device that has recorded all of Earth's history and can display it in a form of a hologram. This hologram can be filmed, but because of the way holograms work, does not come out very clear on movie or film. The crucifixion of Christ on the Mount of Olives has allegedly been put on film to show the public. The EBEs claim to have created Christ, which, in view of the Grand Deception, could be an effort to disrupt traditional values for undetermined reasons. That's a big one to swallow there. I'm not going to go down this hole because I know I do respect people's right to,
All right, on a deeper level, right? So without even attacking people's religion, right? Because you can have this conversation without even having a religious conversation in disrespect. Think about this. Advanced civilization come to a planet that sees a planet, and I'm just saying speculation, and they see people worshiping. Let's say they see the Muslims, the Christians. Let's say they've been studying this for years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, and they see. And I'm just making this example. I'm making this up, and they see what we're influenced by. They know that we don't really know what Christ looked like because they lied to us in certain areas. Now they probably do have recordings of some of this for real, but it also can be used against you because now you can use this to make a people, to brainwash the people, to make a people get completely away from what they believe. And I'm not the biggest on all of the, religious things, we've had them conversations, but I grew up in the church too. So I got respect for people and what they believe, because overall, it's what governs their life and their morality. But when you think about the psychological warfare and the advantage you have when you can display something like this, whether if it's true or not. The manipulation of it is the issue that I see. And then at the same time, we got to be careful, because I've heard documents saying like the government got technology where they're gonna broadcast holograms in the sky on every nation on earth, and you know what I'm saying? And so every nation, like when they in India, they're gonna show them Shiva and all of them. When they in China, they're gonna show them Buddha and them. You feel me? So it's kind of like playing into the psyche, but at the same time, we also have to be aware that what if it's some truth in some of it? You know what I'm saying? So that's the job that we have to do, to be able to use our minds and tap in and to clear our minds to understand what's going on, and to also realize that we're tapped in our own right. They've been suppressing us for thousands of years, and if you think about it, we're still being suppressed, but they know, because we're in the age of Aquarius and information, that our spiritual sense is starting to come back, and they know that they don't have but so long to suppress it. Because even in Morris history, that's why I studied a lot. They said that whoever's ruling the earth, whether you think the European extraterrestrials, they had They had 5,000 years or 7,000 years where their time is up. So a lot of things have to change. They're just fighting it. So we just have to be intelligent enough to be honest with each other and share information, so that we all can get to a point where we can give each other information and figure out, okay, what's true, what's not. But more importantly, like I told my bro, you want to be prepared. If you got kids or something like, you want to be prepared so that if something does happen, just in case any of it's true, because we know that if there's good, there's bad. So there's good ones and there's bad ones. Our job to be able to learn, pay attention, and know the difference. Because whether if you got it, demons, angels, in some sense, this could be something, right? So that's why I say be open-minded. That's why I say I'll be sensitive on what people believe in their religions. But it could be used, manipulation is my biggest point. So it doesn't mean that you believe everything, but you don't throw it out. As an intellect, you listen and you store this information in case this information or something in it pops up again and it shows itself and you see certain things so that you can see the signs. And that's the key.
A belief. I do understand that some might take offense even at the speculatory nature of this being true. And I do understand that this can be blasphemous to those who do believe. But for the sake of research, we are going to entertain these ideas throughout this podcast. Another videotape allegedly in existence is an interview with an EBE. Since EBEs communicate telepathically, an Air Force colonel serves as an interpreter. Just before the recent stock market correction in October 1987, several newsmen, including Bill Moore, had been invited to Washington, D.C. to personally film the EBE in a similar type interview and distribute the film to the public. Apparently, because of the correction in the market, it was felt the timing was not propitious. In any case, it certainly seems like an odd method to inform the public of extraterrestrials, but it would be in keeping with the actions of a panicked organization who at this point in time doesn't know which way to turn. I mean, you want to talk about a panic organization, just look at the people in charge right now of telling us what the hell's going on with these drone incursions. Moore is also in possession of more Aquarius documents, a few pages of which leaked out several years ago and detailed the super secret NSA project had been denied by them until just recently. In a letter to Senator John Glenn and
yeah, but do you hear? It's called the Aquarius Project, and we're in the age of Aquarius now. So that means that they already know. I told people that I said this years ago. One day I was like 14 and I was at my mom's house. Well, I was a little older, probably like 18. And I woke up like 4 in the morning. I was on the NASA channel. And they were saying that certain extraterrestrials was going to show themselves. I believe it was like 2025 or 26 or 27, somewhere in that time. And I always kept it in my mind because I was like, yo, this can't be real. But it was on like 3-4 o'clock in the morning on a NASA station. And it was breaking down life forms. And I'm telling you, like, it said that NASA knows that there's over like 300-400 types of different beings. The problem is they said over like 75% look like us, and they're not violent. They came here to survive and blended in thousands of years ago, or some of them are still living in the earth. And there are some, as they say, hostile different types, and some that don't come for good, some that look at us as food, and some that been protecting us for thousands of years. So it's an open-minded conversation. But on a real spiritual level, if you understand and start digging in our ancestors and the stories of what they're saying, and you look at what this is saying, you look at what the ancient walls are saying, and you can get a clear story that something definitely is going on, regardless of what you believe.
NSA's Director of Policy, Julia B. Wetzel, wrote, apparently
even when you think about who cloned Tyrone, but who really was creating the clones? See, we were just thinking on the government level, but even that movie showed you that they was in control, and they was producing stereotypes around America. So that's when I said, remember, on the plantation, it was, as they said, the poor whites who was whooping and beating that we know of history. They were the middlemen. And even in slavery, like even in America, we always looking at somebody, a little white man, they're the middlemen. Who are they answering to is the question. That's the real question if you're thinking.
there is or was an Air Force project with that name, Aquarius, which dealt with UFOs. Coincidentally, there is also an NSA project by that name. NSA's Project Aquarius deals specifically with the communications with aliens, the EBEs. Within the Aquarius program was Project Snowbird, a project to test fly a recovered alien aircraft at Groom Lake, Nevada. This project continues today at the location. In the words of an individual who works at Groom Lake, our people are much better at taking things apart than they are at putting them back together. So wait, this is 1987. This is before the world was introduced to Bob Lazar. So that person he's referring to might very well be Bob. Moore claims he has a contact with MJ-12, feels that they have been stringing him along, slipping him documents and providing him leads, promising to go public with some of the information on extraterrestrials by the end of 1987. Certain of Moore's statements led one to believe that Moore himself is a government agent working for MJ-12, not to be strung along, but string along ever hopeful ufologists that the truth is just around the corner.
He has done nothing but collect the most outrageous rumor mill stories that are floating around on the grapevine.
But, says Lear, Moore may be working with the government and only exposing parts of the truth. Parts aimed to mislead the truth seekers.
Well, consider this. Number one, Moore states emphatically that he is not a government agent, although when Lee Graham, a Southern California-based ufologist, was investigated by DIS, the Defense Investigative Service, for possession of classified documents received from Moore, Moore himself was not. Oh? Moore states emphatically that the cattle mutilations of 73 to 83 were a hoax by Linda Moulton Howe, producer of Strange Harvest, to create a publicity for herself. He cites the book Mute Evidence as the bottom line of the hoax. Mute Evidence was a government-sponsored book to explain the mutilations in conventional terms. Okay? Moore does seem like he's seeming like a disinfo guy. Seeming spooky. Little spooky vibes coming off Moore. Number three, Moore states that the USAF Academy physics book, Introductory Space Science, Volume 2, Chapter 13, entitled Unidentified Flying Objects, which describes 4 of the most commonly seen aliens, one of which is the EBE, was written by Lieutenant Colonel Edward R. Thurkelson and Major Donald B. Carpenter, Air Force personnel who did not know what they were talking about and were merely citing crackpot references. He, Moore, states that the book was withdrawn to excise the chapter. If the government felt they were being forced to acknowledge the existence of aliens on Earth because of the overwhelming evidence, such as the October and November sightings in Whiteville, Virginia, and recently released books such as Night Siege by Hynek, and taking into consideration the grand deception and obviously hostile intentions of the EBEs, it might be expedient for MJ-12 to admit the EBEs, but conceal the information on the mutilations and abductions. If MJ-12 and Moore were in some kind of agreement, then it would be beneficial to Moore to toe the party line. For example, MJ-12 would say, here are some more genuine documents, but remember, no talking about the mutilations or abductions. This would be beneficial to Moore as it would supply the evidence to support his theory that ETs exist, but deny the truths about ETs. However, if Moore was indeed working for MJ-12, he would follow the party line anyway, admitting the ETs, but poo-pooing the mutilations and abductions. If working alone, Moore might not even be aware of the grand deception. That's something that I've pondered myself recently. Looking into the abduction phenomenon, it is terrifying. It is scary. Some people would say that it isn't even happening. And to them, I would say the people who I've spoken to seem to be legitimately psychologically affected by whatever it is they believe had happened to them. There are thousands of people like this that have come forward over the years, denying that what they said happened actually happened is, I think, just plain mean. I think you have to look into it more than that. I don't want to be this type of person that says, I believe that this person believes that they were abducted. Even though that is the case, I do believe that they believe they were abducted. Looking at all the evidence and all the testimony leads me to believe that they were. But that is, as mentioned here, I think, not a conversation a lot of people are ready to have, especially in a time where we're still debating whether or not UFOs are real. It's very hard to bring up the topic that, oh, they are real and they have pilots and the pilots have a deal with the government and the government knows about these abductions and the abductions are still taking place. That is a big pill to swallow. And so, although Lear here says that they don't want anybody knowing about the abductions, which is true, I also think, what benefit does it provide anyone if you were to go public with these abductions? It would just cause mass panic. I'm looking at this from a devil's advocate point of view, by the way. If you were the U.S. government, you would probably find a way to disseminate this information in the most subtle manner, in a way that doesn't completely upend the entire economy and, religious beliefs of its citizens. It's such a touchy subject that the last thing you want to do is say, oh, and they also take you apart and study you and inject you. And so I understand their reluctance to do that. I do understand that. But I also understand people's willingness to come forward and say that these things.
Safe Flight Repair. Perfecting your swing is hard.
Nice shot, Dad.
Safe Flight Replace. But replacing your windshield doesn't have to be. Go to safelight.com and schedule a replacement today.
Woo! Sleep better, feel better, and live better with a new mattress from Raymore and Flanagan. Finance your
are happening. Time will tell. It is possible that Moore will go ahead and release the video interview with the military officer around the first of the year, as he promised. People in the UFO community promising information and not delivering? No. That can't be true. Who would do such a thing? Who would say that something's going to happen and then it doesn't? No. I don't believe any prominent figure in the UFO community would ever do or say such a thing and not deliver. From MJ12's point of view, the public would be exposed to the information without really having to believe it because Moore is essentially not as credible as a source, say the President of the United States. After a few months of digestion and discussion, a more credible source could emerge with a statement that, yes, in fact, the interview was essentially factual. The scenario would cushion somewhat the blow to the public. If, however, Moore does not release the tape by, say, February 1, 1988, but comes instead with a story similar to the following. Okay, first of all, strategically speaking, that would make sense that if you put out something, let's say today, let's take this example and apply it to today's landscape of social media. If you were to put out a video of a craft that is so freaking clear, or an alien talking, or whatever it is, so clear, most of the internet would deny that it's true. They would blame AI, CGI, actors, whatever. Maybe half, but probably less than half of the people would believe that this is true. In the UFO community, by the way. In general, most people would just dismiss it. If the president came out later and said, oh, that video is real, it would lessen the blow because everybody's seen it and digested it already. And toyed with the idea, oh, what if this was real, and just kind of sat with that. It would lessen the effect that this would have, in terms of an ontological shock. That's a valid strat right there. Release the information by an uncredible source and then confirm it by a credible source later. Wow. If I look at what one of those things might be today, maybe what Bob Lazar is saying, maybe the Immaculate Constellation sort of documents that came out recently, those photos that everybody says were fake. What if those, oh no, those were true? I don't know. That's a cool way to put out information and cushion the blow. So now he's saying if he didn't do that, he would have a story similar to the following. MJ12 has informed me that they are definitely planning a release of all information by October of '88. I've seen the plan and have seen the guarantee that this will happen, so I've decided to withhold the release of my videotape at this time, as it may cause some problems with MJ12's plans. This would in effect buy more time for MJ12, and time is what they desperately need. Okay, now you ask, why haven't I heard of any of this? Well, who do you think you would hear it from? Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Sam Donaldson? Wrong. These people just read the news. They don't find it. They have ladies who call and interview witnesses and verify statements on stories coming over the wire. It's not like Dan Rather would go down to Wytheville, Virginia, and dig into why there were 4,000 reported sightings in October and November of 1987. No one, but no one, is going to risk their neck on such outlandish ideas, regardless of how many people report sightings of 900-foot objects running them off the road.
They had a report, the sheriff's department did, of a car being run off the road by a round circular aircraft just north of Wytheville and Graham's Forge. The sheriff himself confirmed that it was credible people and they were unfamiliar with the previous sighting. So therefore, there was no reason for a copycat sighting.
Other sightings would follow, one by a state police dispatcher. So 2 weeks after the first UFO report, a skeptical Gordon and his old friend Roger Hall decided to check things out for themselves.
It was about 600 to 900 feet long, at least. We're talking humongous craft. And we based that on, he and I watched it go over a couple houses, range-style houses, and if it had fell, it would have obliterated them. That's how big it was.
It was absolutely no sound to it. It was flying probably under 1,000 feet and less than 1,000 feet away.
The craft, as it went away from us, we noticed the dome shape in the back had 3 picture window like lights in the back.
In the case of the Whiteville sightings, dozens of vans with NASA lettered on the side failed to interest newsmen, and those that asked questions were informed that NASA was doing a weather survey. Well, I'll tell you one person who would do these interviews and doesn't mind a potential blemish on his career, and that person is George Knapp, because George Knapp is in fact the person who John Lear went to and broke the story of Bob Lazar. And if it wasn't for that collaborative event that took place in 1989, I think the UFO landscape as we know it wouldn't be as far along as we've come. Well then, you ask, what about our scientists? What about Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke? Wouldn't they have known? If Carl Sagan knows, then he's committing a great fraud through the solicitation of memberships in the Planetary Society to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Another charade into which the U.S. government dumps millions of dollars every year is the radio telescope of Arecibo, Puerto Rico, operated by Cornell University with, guess who? Carl Sagan. Cornell is ostensibly searching for signals from outer space, a sign maybe that someone is out there. It's hard to believe that relatively intelligent astronomers like Sagan could be so ignorant. Okay. Shots fired. What about Isaac Asimov? Surely the most prolific science fiction writer of all time would have guessed by now that there must be an enormous cover-up. Maybe. But if he knows, he's not saying. Perhaps he's afraid that Foundation and Empire will turn out to be inaccurate. What about Arthur C. Clarke? Surely the most technically accurate of science fiction writers with very close ties to NASA would have at least a hint of what's really going on. Again, if so, he's not talking. In a recent science fiction survey, Clarke estimates that contact with extraterrestrial life will not occur before the 21st century. If the government won't tell us the truth and
they're not talking because that's how they made their careers. They use those men to make movies to program us. So why would they expose themselves? Because then it would make you not look at them as being so great.
Major net.
Even guys like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, like with all this technology, these are the people they brought it to us with. But even in the old cartoon, I can think of what movie that was. When Eddie Murphy was playing that Blue Rat, and they told us. And he was like, what you think? Humans invented this? The internet? This and that? He's like, please. And it was funny. And it was the aliens. It was a cartoon for kids.
Networks won't even give us serious consideration. then what is the big picture anyway? Are the EBEs, having done 100,000 or more abductions, possibly millions worldwide, built an untold number of secret underground bases, Groom Lake, Nevada, Sunspot, Datil, Roswell, and Pinetown, New Mexico, just to name a few, getting ready to return to wherever they came from? Or, from the obvious preparations, are we to assume that they are getting ready for a big move? Or is the more sinister and more probable solution that the invasion is essentially complete and it's all over but the screaming? A well-planned invasion of Earth for its resources and benefits would not begin with mass landings of ray gun-equipped aliens. A properly planned and executed invasion by a civilization thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of years in advance of us would most likely be complete before even a handful of people, say 12, realized it was happening. No fuss, no muss. The best advice I can give you is this. Next time you see a flying saucer and are awed by its obvious display of technology and gorgeous lights and pure colors, run like hell. Wow, what a read-through, dude. For those of you interested in the Majestic 12 documentations and the alleged proof thereof, by the way, which the FBI completely said was bogus. Numerous times they doubled down. They're like, this is not real. This is not real. But, you know, MJ12 has come up quite a lot. Like, it was all the craze in the 80s and 90s. I will probably eventually do a deep dive on Majestic 12, looking into its members, looking into, you know, when it was formed, how it was denied, the FOIA requests.
Look, all I'm saying is that I introduced you to the information because it's one of the things that I watch and keep my mind on. They've been telling us, these are the same people that told us that none of this is real. So the same people that sent all bogus, these are the same people that said that none of this was even possible. Can't trust them. We just got to figure this out. And I know that was a heavy video, but that's what we're doing this year. A lot of real, try to get more in-depth information for the mind. Now, for the second part of the video, it's just bugged out. Bizarre Foods, they said, at a time I started watching it, but I noticed every continent he went to, he kept eating penis and shit. I'm like, all right, I already know what bro. So that's what made me kind of, but he be eating some different shit. Like, it's personally, I ain't eating none of that. But just to see the different styles of people eat in the world, I want to show you this episode to show you the bizarre ways people eat. And it's crazy because we look at them crazy, but some of the animals we eat, they be looking at us like we crazy. So tap in before we get out of here.
Japan is known for its sashimi, its ramen, and its wagyu. But did you know it's also known for some other weird stuff too? This is a country where you can find foods like raw horse, raw shark heart, and even alien-looking snakefish called borasubo. Well, today I'm on a mission to find the strangest, most unique restaurants serving food fare you won't find in any other country. And by the end of this video, I'll eat one of the most shocking foods I've seen anywhere ever. We're talking about a bear paw. I know what you're thinking. That's not food. You mean a bear's foot? That's what I mean. We have a lot to get to today, but let me tell you, this video is going to be challenging for me as a consumer, but also for you as a viewer. So I need you to hang in there. Stay with me through this. Don't make me do this alone. All right, right now we're headed to our first location, the location containing the Bear Paw. Right behind me, GBA Kishiya. This is a restaurant specializing in game meats. Evidently included in those game meats is bear paw. This is a dish that takes all day to make. So we've come here in the morning to see it get started. And by this evening, we're actually going to be able to eat it. But first, I want to take a look at this bear paw. Oh my God. Guys, have you ever seen anything like this? 3 giant bear paws. Where's the 4th one? This bear was an amputee. This bear went top. E-Rock. I'm sorry. You can see clearly these two are the back feet. This is the front paw. Oh, it feels so weird. Look at these massive fingernails, claws that could actually tear you to shreds. And then on this side, dude, look at that pad. This is thick, callous. Oh, it's bigger than my hand. All right, I'm gonna pick up the back one. Oh my God, it looks notably different. A big, thick, padded, super callous bottom of the foot right there. Thick hair covering everything. And then of course right here, that's where its ankle socks end. end. This is a wild one for me, but what's really wild is trying to understand how this even works. Where are these bears from? Why are they eating it? Why is it so expensive? And how did this become a tradition in Japan? That is what I need to find out. Next, I'm going to head inside and speak to the owner about this. We have a lot to discuss. The sourcing is perhaps the most interesting part of this. How do you, in a giant city with like 20 million people, get your hands on these hands?
He actually shipped all the way from Hokkaido, and he asked a middleman company who has connections with all these hunters like from Hokkaido, and he's also in connection with like hunters themselves as well.
Hunters. So all the bears here are hunted. They're not like farm raised bears, I guess. Are there that many bears in Japan?
There are many bears out there. However, the good thing is the demand's pretty low, so there's not as many stores or restaurants that serve bear paw in Japan.
Why is there a focus on the feet in particular?
It's considered like a luxury dish in China over there. So that culture kind of swept into Japan. And so even in Japan, it's considered a luxury dish. In addition to that, personally for Kishi-san, he really enjoyed like the impact of it.
I assume when he says impact, I mean like the visual. Take a look at this. That looks insane. Here, hold it.
It's so heavy.
It's so big.
It's so big.
It looks like it came from a dinosaur. So from here, we're going to prepare it, and by tonight, it'll be ready to eat. Step one is happening right here. He has a pressure cooker pot, and he is filling that with water right now. He puts that into the pot, submerging the whole thing, and we will say goodbye to that guy. We'll see that in a couple of hours.
In the meantime, the chef prepares a delicacy so rare, few Japanese have even tried it. The brain of a deer. First, it's lightly seasoned with flavor enhancers, salt, MSG, and pepper. Next, he coats both sides of the brain with flour. In a skillet, the chef adds a splash of olive oil and a bit of butter. Once it's sizzling hot, the brain is placed in the pan.
Let me tell you something. We're bugged out. It's like, I love food, don't get me wrong. And I'm a fat kid at heart. But this, they bugging. Like, that's why I say, I don't care if it's a homeboy, friend, somebody dating, anything. I don't care what you want. It's just certain things I'm not eating, right? So I'm just going to make that clear now. You know what I'm saying? This is for entertainment purposes only, because as I pop in and out, this is crazy, right? But if you eat this, hey, right in the feed, tell me why.
And when one side is fully seared, he gives it a flip, basting it with care. Into the oven it goes for 20 minutes to cook through. Then it returns to the skillet for a final touch of golden perfection, if you want to call it that.
Get matched today with the tax expert who's just right for your situation. They'll do your tax.
He flavors the plate with a sauce made with a blend of herbs, garlic, breadcrumbs, and anchovies.
All right, folks, this is my first meal of the day, and it is a doozy. This is not just any ordinary brain. This is the brain of a deer. What is a part of the brain that understands how traffic works? Because that is missing in every single deer, especially in Minnesota, where I'm from. Let's dig into it. So I've got some of my green emulsion mixed with some of that beautiful brain. Let's give it a shot. Wow. Very fatty, soft, tender. The outside does have a little bit of a skin to it. That being said, all the flavors in my mouth, fireworks. Amazing.
This is my first taste of the day, and I've got to say, it's a strong start. But in the end, it's just a distraction from the inevitable bear paw.
I am here again with Kishi-san. 2 hours has gone by, and we are going to remove the bear paw from the pot and see how it looks. Oh, it looks nuts. It's a bit smelly, although this is looking a lot cleaner, and you can see the claws just sticking out of the water. From here, he's filling the pot with even more water and dumping some of that out. The smells in here are amazing. Not really. He peels off the bottom of the foot, the pad, revealing the pink subdermis. Slowly but steadily, he peels away the skin and the fur, revealing the nice pink meat underneath. Looking at this thing now without the hair, it looks even more terrifying. It's so big, so muscular. I mean, look at this foot. It looks wild. From here, he's going to finish the tedious work of pulling out every single hair, and then that's going to head back into the pressure cooker, right?
While the bear paw spends some hours grazing, I'm hitting the streets on the lookout for some more exceptional, unexpected Japanese food.
While our bear paw is cooking at our first location, we have come here, a place called Rice and Circus. And let me tell you, it is a circus inside. And no, I don't just mean it's wild and chaotic. I mean, like every animal that you've ever seen in a circus, they're probably serving them up here. This is not common food in Japan. This is kind of like wild stamina dude foods. The owner is already underway cooking up our first dish. We're gonna go inside, check it out, and then learn more about the food they're serving here. Let's move. All right, folks, I'm entering the kitchen now, meeting Mr. Momiyama-san right here. This is our starting course. Kinkama. That might, in Japanese, mean testicles. Testicles. These are not just any testicles. These are wild boar testicles. I'm told they're a little bit smaller than a pig's testicles. Now, he is going to prepare this into a delicious appetizer for me to try. Step one, he takes the testicle, which appears to be frozen. It's a testicle icicle at the moment. He slices each end, and he takes the skin from the outside of the testicle and just peels it away. From here, he gives the testicle a bit of a slice. They look like they could be pepperonis on a pizza. Kind of. A little bit. Not really. He eats it with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And then here we have some flour. These look like donut holes at this point. The testicles are sizzling away. He throws some greens into the pan and a little bit of butter. He hits it with some soy sauce. He seasons the plate with pepper. And just like that, our testicle is finished. I'm going to give...
I told y'all. Yeah, whether you think I'm capping or not, I told y'all. Like, I remember, I think it's my mom house watching this one day, and I'm sitting back, and I'm thinking, like, and every time I would sit there, I'd be like, yo, you always eating some testicle or penis. And they believe in some cultures that it make them, like, help their testosterone and make them stronger. Who started this shit?
Give one a shot right now. Oishi. Oishi. All right. It says it's yummy. Let's go for it. Oishi. Oh, thank you. It's got a nice flavor to it. It almost tastes more beefy than it does porky, even though it is technically pork. You would think it would be more fatty and gelatinous, but it's almost like a hard pate. It has kind of almost like a crumbly texture in the center. The seasoning is basic but delicious. He's got some veggies in there too. It's legitimately good. So this is my appetizer, and it's actually the least strange thing I'm going to be eating here today. I want to talk to this guy more to learn about how this place works. Thank you for the testicle. That was a wonderful experience. This place seems like it has a little bit of everything. Can you explain what the theme of this place is?
The motto of their company is fun equals good tasting food. And so we want people to be happy, like having fun. And when you serve things that are so like bizarre and interesting, it's just like naturally they have a smile on their face or they're like really intrigued.
Can you tell me some of the more bizarre items that are popular here?
One of the rare ones is definitely the testicle, and then also the brain, sheep, pig, and for this year, they're thinking about hopefully getting whale brain.
Whale brain? Is that the size of a Cadillac? I am back in the kitchen with Momiyama-san. We've got one other food in store. That food being this right here. That, my friends, is a Japanese crow that he's about to cook up that I'm going to be tasting shortly. Step one, he puts it in a bowl and he seasons it with a little bit of salt. He hits it with a little bit of oil. The seasonings are quite simple, especially for Japan, but it's because folks here want to have the real taste of whatever animal it is that they're eating. He puts it on a steel tray, and it looks like that is going to head into the oven in the world's smallest kitchen. 20 minutes has passed. It is time to pull out that crow. There we go. Still sizzling. Oh my gosh. It looks insane. Look at that face. All right, folks, we have our epic main course right here, starting with the bird. The breast meat is usually the best because it has the most actual protein. So it looks a little bit medium. Let's give it a shot. Not bad. It kind of tastes like quail breast, but more substantial. It's a bigger bird. It's got bigger pecs, more muscle for more flight. That is the breast. But my favorite part of most birds is right here. This is the drumstick. Oh my God, just do some jujitsu to it. Oh yeah, that's what happened to Conor McGregor right there. And then there you have it. Cheers. Yeah, tough indeed. It's a rich meat. It tastes good. It's most similar to maybe quail or puffin. A bit tough. And it has a lot of hemoglobin. It tastes like bloody and juicy, almost like a steak.
So that is the crow. But the real highlight of this location is right beside it. The horse's,
If you want to learn how to edit really well from professional Hollywood editors, we're going to show you the stuff that nobody else is teaching.
How do I say this? At first glance, it may seem terrifying to some of you. And that's because it absolutely is.
Let's talk about what we're going to be eating today. I feel like we need to bleep it. Today I'm having a horse penis. Why?
So first reason is because a lot of people throw away penises. So to like use things that we don't use, kind of like sustainability, I guess, in a way. The second reason is definitely for fun. Everyone who comes here, they always ask, do you have this penis? Do you have that penis?
This seems pretty fun. All right, should we do it?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have our horse part right here. He's gonna pick it up and just show us the size. That's big. And when he puts it down, it looks like it could be its own species. I never thought I would come face to face with something like this. Brutal. The first thing he does is he puts it into this pot of boiling water. And you know what? Let's get a couple in there while we're at it. All of that is going to boil in there for 90 minutes. I'm told these horse parts are from France, Japan, and Canada. Wow, such a multicultural group right there.
After boiling for a while, all the meats are moved to a pressure cooker for 10 minutes with salt and MSG added to give the horse parts a flavor boost. Once the boiling is done, it heads into the oven for another 30 minutes to really lock in the flavor.
Let's see the final product. Oh my God. Ooh. Here we have our horse appendage plated in its final resting place. It looks... Yeah, it looks gruesome. I don't know what to say. I'm not excited. Hold on, let me give it a little bit of a sniff. Mmm. Good smell, he said. This thing right here costs $56. It's a bit pricey for a nightmare of a food experience. If we were showing this in a traditional Japanese film, we would have to do this to it. Pixelation. So I'm going to start with mid-shaft, I guess. This is a good time to click away from the video, but don't do it. Oh, God. It's so gummy. This is a lot to handle. The only thing giving me comfort is knowing that in a second, I'm going to turn the camera around and make the camera guy take a bite. Cheers. What? That tastes pretty good. It just tastes like kind of roast beef. I thought it was going to have an intense smell or gamey aroma to it. It doesn't. What about this part? This thing has been braised so long in that pressure cooker, it has really broken down all the fat. It's become very tender. They could throw this inside a Mexican taco. You wouldn't really know what it was. You would think it's beef. Sure, there's some unusual textures. It's kind of like gooey, tendon, soft meat. You can just see the texture as I move it around. But in the end, it's pretty good. So I know what you're asking yourself. Since I generally enjoy this overall, am I going to be willing to try the tip? The answer may surprise you. It's no. But my camera guy. I've got a small portion right here. Here, let me borrow that from you. How you feeling, Thomas?
Not so great anymore.
Stab it?
That's the whole thing.
It's a one biter. Give it a shot. It's like braised beef. Imagine it's just braised beef. You want some sake?
No.
Go ahead.
Oh, so fatty.
Well done. That is an experience you can't undo. But today we have a lot more to see. Soon we're going to be going to that first location again to try the completed bear paw. But first, if you are coming to Japan, I highly recommend booking a food tour or food experience with buyfood.com. I'll talk about them more at the end of the video. But now we're headed to our next location where we're going to try something that's still alive. Let's move. We have come to our next location here, a place where you can actually go fishing for your food yourself. And then the food they turn that food into. It's wild. Let me show you how it works. First of all, we have a diagram right here. Step 1, buy a fishing rod, then go fishing, then do a dance of joy once you've caught a fish. From there, you pass the fish to a chef, then they cook it in any way you prefer, and finally, you eat the fish. Let me show you inside. Basically, it's a giant pool with a boat built on top of it. Then inside, you've got water that is full of fish. These are fish that you can catch yourself with a fishing rod if you would like. Along here, they have a load of different fish. They have horse mackerel. They have sea bream. As you keep going, they even have lobster. How are you going to fish for a lobster? We are going to be having a lobster later, though. Right now, we're headed into the kitchen for a food known as dancing squid. We have our squid wrangler right here. We have our chef, and we have the star of the show right here. That is the squid. Step 1, remove the squid from its little prison. He takes a knife and he goes beneath the cap, cutting it off, removing it, turning the whole thing white. He puts a stick inside of it, puts it over some ice, and then he takes some soy sauce, he pours it on top, and that is our dancing squid. Oh man, that looks gnarly. Additionally, he gets some lemon to put on top. Can I say that was a pretty short-lived dancing career? Oh, hold on. We got a twitch. Meanwhile, over here we have the cap from the squid. The chef splits it in half, and that's like its organs and brain and digestive. All of it's in its head. He peels the skin from the main meat of the squid, leaving behind this beautiful, meaty, translucent layer. From here, he cuts the bony tendon from the cap. Ew, we don't want that. He lightly scores it, not cutting it all the way through. Whoa, then he chucks it at the cutting board. It curls up immediately. And from here, he really juliennes the squid, cutting it into thin pieces. He put the skin of the squid onto the serving dish, and then our squid cap sashimi going on next. Good? Good. Thank you. Boom, squid right here. This is like the thin strips of sashimi. Let's give it a shot. Hit it with a little bit of soy sauce. Oh, that's good. It's a delightful texture. It's cold. It's very dense. It's really like squid, and that's about it. If you had this skin on there, I'm guessing it would feel a lot more slimy. Ugh. Am I supposed to eat this? You know, after the horse? Let's go for it. Hit it with a little bit of soy sauce, and... I wish I had a beer. It's really crumbly. Oh my God, it's like chewing on snot. It's like if a booger had a skeleton. It's similar firmness to this part right here, except it's even more thin, except for it also has a slimy layer of skin on the outside of it. I kind of like this. So that is the dancing or seizuring squid. But from here, we're going back into the kitchen because they have one more live seafood that they want to show me. Round 2 requires one of these, a lobster. These are red spiny lobsters. Yeah, take a look at this bad boy. Lively, big. They've got huge legs. It's like the spider of the ocean, but with a tail too. This is what we're after right here, the sashimi that resides within the tail. But this isn't just about the sashimi. They're calling this live lobster. Let's go see how they do it. Step 1, he shivs the lobster. He goes under the shell, separates the tail, and rips the whole top of it off. Now that gets transported quickly over to here, and the head is put onto this decorative boat. Now he's got the tail. He takes his scissors to it, releasing that delicious succulent meat on the inside. He's cut it in half, and then he cuts it into smaller bits. That goes on to this beautiful decorative platter. A platter complete with a moving lobster head. Do you think the lobster is going to be okay? I don't want it to hold a grudge. It looks mad. There you go. Sorry. Don't show that. Meanwhile, chopsticks. Right here we have that sashimi. Let's give it a shot. Cheers. Oh my God, it's so delicious. It's tender, it's a little fatty, there's no sinew, and it's a completely different experience to eating cooked lobster. One more bite. Thank you, lobster. You did good work. I'm not considering everyone's opinion in the room, but for me, absolutely delicious. So that is the live seafood portion of today. But from here, we're going back to the Bear Paw location to see if our food is finally done. Let's take a look. We are back in the kitchen. I am with Kushi-san, and he has finished doing his manicure on this bear paw. It looks terrifying. How do you say scary in Japanese? Kawaii. Kawaii. Guys, I don't. The nails even come off. Here, let me just put that back. There you go. Oh boy. So from here, we're going to finish the cooking process. He is putting the paw into the pot, and that is going to boil for about 15 minutes.
While the bear paw boils, the chef adds a mix of greens and vegetables, carrots, onions, bay leaves, leeks, celery, and garlic cloves to help eliminate any gamey flavors.
I guess the big question, what everyone's wondering is, why are people eating this?
Counter question, he's like, do not people abroad like eat bear paws?
Oh, wow. Well, you got me there. We do all the time. No, some people eat bear in the USA, but I would say it's pretty rare. They honestly would probably discard the paws.
Same as like China, some people eat it for good luck, good fortune. In addition, there's a lot of collagen, so a lot of people come eat it for like beauty reasons, like for the skin, etc.
After 30 minutes, the stove is turned off, allowing the pressure in the pot to naturally release until it's safe to open.
It's interesting saying that there's collagen, it's good for beauty, because there's no way women are eating this.
Actually, around like 60% of the people who come to his restaurant and eat the bear paw is actually women.
Amazing. Maybe this is just a sign sign of modern times. Women are getting into the crazy food too.
Next, he strains out the vegetables, leaving the stalk behind, a portion of which is boiled separately to create a reduction. And here it is, the bear paw, after an entire day of boiling and preparing. In a separate pan, the paw is simmered with some bear stock while being basted with vinegar and honey. Once the bear paw turns light brown, it's left to rest. Meanwhile, the remaining rich brown stock from the pan is poured into the sauce reduction and boiled for a few more minutes until it becomes thick.
All right, guys, we have it right here. The final product, the fully cooked bear paw, and it's all due to this man right here, Kishi-san. Amazing work. Let's talk about money. This is one of the most prized parts of the bear's body. He did not have any paws laying around, and what he said is that I would have to buy 4 paws from a freshly hunted bear. How much did I pay for that? For 4 bear paws, it was over $1,000. Essentially, it's around $260 or $70 per foot. So maybe watch the video twice. Maybe go support our sponsors. I'm going to build up a little bit of liquid courage before we get started here. Now, this is sake in a jar. I'm not really sure how to have at this. Oh, there's some nice gooey bits right there. The bear has a bit of a gamey, a bit of a funk to it, but then there's astringent, sour, smelly balsamic vinegar. So you can see some of that has become very gummy and is falling off. Right here, I've got a little bit of the side of the paw. Cheers. Very gummy, super gelatinous. It's a funky tasting bear. If I'm gonna get any meat out of this thing, I gotta go to the palm. These are the pads, the toes, and then the pads on the bottom of the foot. That is gonna be super gelatinous. Let's try to get this. Oh, it's so gooey. So this seems to be a bit more meaty. This seems like legitimate protein. Let's give it a shot. Oh, wow. It's so spongy. It's like eating lungs. You bite and it bites back. That is the springy tissue that's meant to support the weight of a bear that weighs over 450 pounds. Of course, it's just going to be padding. I'm struggling here, my guy. He's already moved on to his next project. Let's try this. This is the toe. That one's a little bit more like cow skin, just very thick skin that's been braised forever. It's fatty, it's gelatinous. Right now I feel so grateful that he mixed all these bear flavors with this strong balsamic vinegar. It's very powerful and it's offsetting any of that funkiness from the bear claw. This is something I feel like that could feed a group of people. First of all, it's super rich. This can't be a meal. There's no way someone's sitting down to eat a whole bear paw. This is an unbelievable tradition, a food that when I heard about it, I was very shocked to hear that it existed here in Japan. Today I set out with the goal of eating bear paw and we found one and we cooked it and by golly, I ate it up. What a treat. But from now, I'm gonna go outside and tell you which food I thought was the most shocking from today and which food I suggest you never try. Let's move. Today was a wild day. Inside, I told you I was gonna tell you which food was the most shocking to me, but also which food I think you shouldn't try. Can I be honest? It's the same food. It is the bear paw. Yes, I know I ate it, but I ate it for journalistic purposes. Basically, I ate the bear paw so you don't have to. I can't have it on my...
I know I gave y'all 2 crazy topics today. I want to thank y'all for tapping in. I'll be back tomorrow. I always been saying I'm gonna do something in the evening, especially like on the weekends, give people time to get home with the kids and to settle in. So crazy topics with the UFO. You know, a lot of people reach out to me, talk to me about what they feel about the show, how you feel. I'm always open to the conversation and open to ideas and information if you know something. So I appreciate y'all for tapping in, and I'll be back with y'all with more information. Organic Minds, episode 21. Thank y'all for tapping in. BH.